What is up, all of the Dowdican students? I'm so glad that you are here on the YouTube. Pray you all made it through. But here's what I want to do. These are going to be the notes that you missed because you went to watch our volleyball team become victorious today and on Friday as well. So if you remember, when we left here on Wednesday and on Tuesday for our A classes, you guys, we left with America wanting to remain neutral in World War I. And if you remember, the President of the United States, he actually proclaimed that we were going to be neutral, meaning we're not going to be in the war, we're not going to fight. But then Americans, we talked about, were deeply divided. Germany and Ireland, their immigrants were in favor of Germany. You also had most Americans, though, were either British or they favored for the French because the French helped us out during the American Revolution. So all of this kind of goes back and forth. But the main thing was America was not wanting to get into the war. But one major event happens that causes that. And what that is it's going to be something called unrestricted submarine warfare. Now, I'm going to put these up on the board for you, and you can see them here. Now, I would suggest you can pause this if you would like, but the trade trigger is this, is that Wilson wanted to, remember when we talked about idealism, Wilson wanted to make sure that America gained economically through this war. So what he did was he granted pro-allies neutrality. In other words, he was going to help the allies, which were Britain, Great Britain, France, and Russia during the war. He was going to help them. That's why it says pro. And on the other hand, it was one of those deals where it was about making money by giving loans to the allies. Now, the problem was this. The Germans used U-boats. Now, a U-boat is simply an underwater boat. It is a submarine. And what happened was that the U-boats made it almost impossible for the Allies basically to trade and to send weapons, to send goods and supplies to the Allies because these U-boats were all in the North Atlantic Sea and they would sink ships. Now, we're going to talk about that next, and on the next thing, I'm going to put up the video, or not the video, but your timeline on the next section. So let's check this out. Now, the timeline, as we go over to here, our next timeline is going to be this. It is the timeline of unrestricted submarine warfare, or submarine warfare. So, check this out as I pull back. Don't freak out here. And right there, you're going to be able to see this. And what I want you to do is I'm going to go over this, but I want you all to just pause it and you can write these things down. Now, what happens is submarines are underwater boats. They're called U-boats. And in America and all across the world, there is something called international law. Now, there's two parts to international law. One is that military ships can't fire upon merchant ships or liners that are carrying people, passenger ships. So what happens is, if they do suspect and can confirm that there are war materials on board, they can sink them, but as the second part, which is third up here, the crew and the passengers must be saved. Now, the problem was for Germany, was America was sending all sorts of weapons, they were sending all sorts of materials to help the Allies. And the German leadership decided that what they would do is they would have something called unrestricted, no restrictions of international law. So what happens is they do this, and they have this particular thing called unrestricted submarine warfare. And the fifth box is this. Off of the coast of Ireland, there's a ship, a cruise ship called the Lusitania. The Lusitania was sunk, and as a result, many Americans changed their point of view. Now, here's the deal. The Germans still, to this day, say that the Lusitania sunk because it had weapons on board, because it blew up and exploded. Now, the problem was it didn't matter, because the Lusitania changed the minds of many Americans to where they became for the war now. Now, another thing, little known fact, there were two other ships that were sunk during this time, the Arabic and the Sussex, which were both American ships. Now, what happened was Woodrow Wilson kind of drew a line in the sand. He said, no more. If you continue with unrestricted submarine warfare, we will have to go to war with you. And what happens as a result of that was Germany agreed to something called the Sussex Pledge. Now, what the Sussex Pledge was it said that Germany would go back and follow international law. But Americans and American leadership was starting to lean more towards going to war. Now, pause now, write those down in your notes, and then we will go back over here to this. Now, what happens is there's a U-boat there, and I'll get you some video stuff from that particular period. But the next thing on our notes was the election of 1916. Now, the election of 1916 was this. It was where Woodrow Wilson is going to run for his second term. He runs up against a Supreme Court justice, which is a very unique thing. Never happened before because Supreme Court justices have that position for life. But he runs up against Charles Evans Hughes, and Wilson wins by this one thing where he talks about he kept us out of war. So he runs on this neutral program, and yet we're going to discover that something more happens. So, give you time to write that down, so pause and go from there. And then we'll go to our next section. And you'll skip all these lovely questions because I'm not going to make you go through that. So, we're going to go to this. The proverbial straw that is going to break the camel's back is this. What it is it's called the Zimmermann telegram. And the Zimmermann telegram in your notes is number 9. And what it is Arthur Zimmermann is a German foreign minister to, and what he does is try to gain support from Mexico. So what he does is the British find this out and they give it to America. And this is kind of the way the thing is, but most pictures you'll see it as just a series of numbers, and America breaks it. So what it does is this, it says that if Mexico joins the war on the side of the Germans, that Mexico will receive the southwestern part of the United States, Texas. They'll receive Arizona, New Mexico, and the southern part of California. And after, supposedly, if Germany wins, then what would happen is Mexico would receive that. Americans become outraged with a combination of unrestricted submarine warfare and this idea of the Sussex Pledge. So on April the 6th, 1917, America finally joins the war on the side of the Allies. So where we're at is we finally get to this war. which was a very, very unique thing for America as the bell rings. Now, what happens is America is forced to raise an army, which they've never done before. And what the war is, and I'll let you for raising the army, and this is on number 10, was you have the Selective Service Act, which is a national draft. So all men had to go and sign up for that. And it became very apparent that America was not prepared to go to war. We were not ready for war because there's so much more involved. Now, it took us nearly a year to convert our industries into something that would help with wartime production. This is going to assist us in World War II, but in World War I, it took a while to get us into that wartime mode. Now, last thing, I'll give you here. I want to talk to you about the sacrifices that Americans had to have. And these sacrifices, there's two parts to it. Woodrow Wilson starts something called these agencies to help. Hey guys, oh man, I got one of my former students here and I'm making a tape, so we will stop.